Virginia Giuffre was fearless in taking down some of the world's most powerful people. As Jeffrey Epstein's most prominent victim, she helped expose his crimes and hold his friends to account, including the man formerly known as Prince Andrew. But despite her heroic battle in the most notorious sex trafficking case of the 21st century, few know about one of her toughest fights. It was one she fought privately at home in Australia. I'm Samantha Selinger-Morris, and you're listening to the Morning Edition from The Age and the Sydney Morning Herald. Today, Good Weekend Magazine's senior writer Melissa Fife and WA Today reporter Carla Hildebrandt on their 4-part investigative podcast, Virginia. And just a warning, this episode contains mentions of suicide, domestic violence, and other content that may be distressing to listeners. Mel and Carla, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Sam.
Hi, Sam.
I'm so looking forward to speaking to you because many people, when they think of the late Virginia Giuffre, they think of that infamous picture of her about the age of 17 with Prince Andrew. He's got his arm around her waist. That's what comes to mind for many. The two were introduced by Jeffrey Epstein. But Mel, is that what initially drew you to her story, or was it something else?
Actually, the thing that I was first attracted to was the fact that there had been this battle happening over her estate, and that had been going through the WA Supreme Court. And I thought that was initially interesting. One of our editors said, well, why don't you look into her Australian life? Because people don't realise that Virginia lived half of her life in Australia after marrying an Australian man. So when I started to look into it, that was the basis. But then I kind of realised very quickly that Virginia had been the subject of a violent restraining order in Perth, and she had had her 2 children taken away. And that is it's not unheard of for a mother to have her children taken away, but it's quite unusual. And I was thinking, well, what are those circumstances? How did it get to that? And then I knew that I would need some help with this, so I reached out to Carla, who's a fantastic reporter at WA Today, and Carla's been doing a lot of the on-the-ground reporting over there.
And Carla, as you've said in the feature that you wrote with Melissa and also in the podcast that you both have made, this story, it's not about Jeffrey Epstein or the Epstein files, but a battle that Virginia was fighting in private for much of her life. So, Carla, tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, so Virginia credits one man with her escape from Epstein, and that's Robbie Giuffre. She met Robbie in Thailand, and that's when she had just left Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. So she goes to Thailand, and when she's there, she meets Robbie, who's doing a martial arts course at the time. And within 10 days, they are married. And he's seen as the saviour, the person who saved her from that horrible life with Epstein.
I met this amazing person, and long story short, we got married in a Buddhist temple in Chiang Mai, and he took me home to move to Australia, where Australia became my home.
So she moves back to Australia with him, and so what Mel and I were looking into were the instances of domestic violence throughout their relationship. So our earliest understanding of domestic abuse is around 2010. And then later on, we found evidence that she was assaulted. We found the documents that came up in the Epstein files, of all places, in 2015 in Colorado. And then we end up examining the last 4 months of her life after another alleged assault in Perth.
Well, Mel, this is what I wanted to go to you to ask, because you both have chosen to investigate, in particular, these last 4 months of Virginia's life. Virginia, as many of us know, tragically took her own life in April last year. So why are those months of her life so important?
I think what we see with Virginia's last 4 months is a woman that falls outside the legal systems and also other systems, really. After this alleged incident in January the 9th, 2025, where both she and Robbie allege violence, she basically is hotel hopping and in fear of him, she says. And the police investigate, but they don't press any charges, despite the fact that, and we've published these in the Good Weekend piece, she took many photos of her injuries at the time. And part of our investigation was trying to understand why that was, why nothing eventuated from that particular alleged assault. But the second thing, which was really interesting, going back to this question of why Virginia lost her children, is that after this incident in January, where Robbie Giuffre was given a 72-hour police restraining order, so he was the one that was told to go away from Virginia. As soon as that expired, within half a day, we think, he was the one that went up to the Perth Magistrates Court and successfully applied for a temporary restraining order against Virginia, which was, although interim, it was 6 months, and it named 2 of her youngest children as well as him. So she couldn't go home. She couldn't get any of her possessions, and then she couldn't at all, talk to her children, contact Robbie. And that's a very serious thing. And, of course, we know that these things are put in place for a good reason. There's a whole system in Australia, and not just WA, but around Australia, where these interim orders are available to people who are really in emergency situations and they feel like they are unsafe and they need to be protected from a potentially violent partner. And part of the issue here that we discovered with Virginia was that the bar is set very low for these orders. The evidence that you need is not like a normal court proceeding. And also, you can get them held ex parte, which means that the other person doesn't even know or needs to be notified or attend that court hearing. And so they can be done very quickly and with a lower level of evidence. And now we spoke to many domestic violence experts who said that this is really good. This system is good because women in particular, and they mostly are women, need it. However, what these experts also said was that we are seeing rising rates of a thing that's called misidentification, which is where the victim gets misidentified as the perpetrator. Now, obviously, in this situation, Robbie had every right to go to the court if he felt in fear of Virginia. However, it did raise questions about what are the kind of things that magistrates need to look for when people are applying for these orders? And we've basically found that that was a real issue, and that has a cascading effect. So once you've got that order against you and you're treated as the perpetrator, anything that you do from there on in, life is made very difficult. And we saw that with Virginia. In the last 4 months, she became very isolated, and there was very little she could do about that, because when she objected to the order, it was going to take her 6 months to actually come back into the court to hear that objection. And over these 4 months, we were able to piece together what she was doing through access to diaries, photos, text messages, and a lot of exclusive access to her US-based family. All of these things meant that we could reveal what really happened to Virginia in those last 4 months before she sadly took her life on the 25th of April, 2025.
We'll be right back.
Virginia Giuffre helped vanquish a prince and a millionaire.
And I won't stop fighting. I will never be silenced.
But one of her toughest battles was a very private one.
It was the worst thing that could have happened to her. Her children were her life.
Virginia, a podcast from the newsrooms of The Age, the Sydney Morning Herald and WA Today. Out now.
And so, Carla and Mel, we've spoken about how there was domestic abuse that had occurred between Virginia Giuffre and her then husband, Robbie Giuffre, in the lead up to her death. But let's just zero in on this critical moment when a magistrate issued an interim restraining order against Virginia, which then prevented her from seeing 2 of her children. Is it the case that the magistrate and the police involved didn't know, or perhaps weren't told, that years earlier Robbie had been actually arrested for assaulting Virginia back in the US? And so, Carla and Mel, we've spoken about how there was domestic abuse that had occurred between Virginia Giuffre and her then husband Robbie Giuffre in the lead up to her death. But let's just zero in on this critical moment when a magistrate issued an interim restraining order against Virginia, which prevented her from seeing two of her children. Is it the case that the magistrate and the police who were involved in this didn't know or weren't told that years earlier Robbie had been actually arrested for assaulting Virginia back in the US?
Yeah, so he had been charged, but he'd been charged in 2015 in Colorado. So we're not sure about the information sharing between Colorado and Australia.
And the other complicating factor, Carla, of course, was that Virginia had suppressed that report herself, when back in the day when she wanted to keep all of the secrets of her marriage, she had suppressed the report. So we're not sure whether, even if the Australian police were trying to find it, whether they would have found it.
And do we know why she was trying to keep the secrets about her marriage?
We think maybe so they could enter and leave the US, but also it could have been to avoid, we thought it might have been, could have been to avoid media attention as well.
Yeah, definitely. She wanted to avoid media attention because she was gearing up in this battle against Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell, and she wanted to have no other distractions. I think she didn't want the media to be reporting on this part of her life that she didn't really want to have in the public, and she also wanted to protect her children, I think.
And just a note here that Robbie Giuffre did issue a statement through his lawyer. So just tell us, what did he say?
Basically, we put every allegation in the podcast and in the Good Weekend piece to Robbie. And through his lawyers, he responded that Virginia had suffered significant mental health issues and an over-reliance on prescription medication due to the pressure of being in the public eye. And he said, quote, "This may have led to Virginia's change of perspective." He also had what we interpreted as a bit of a go at Virginia's US family, and he said that he was limited in responding to, quote, "various unfounded allegations for legal reasons," because there is the ongoing estate case, and that he and the children had just wanted to remember Virginia as a loving wife and mother.
And Mel, I wanted to ask you something further. What does it say to you that someone as public and high profile, as wealthy as Virginia, could be failed by so many of our systems?
Well, the thing about the issue that we were talking about before, which is misidentification and also perhaps being on the wrong end of a police investigation, particularly misidentification, we know affects Indigenous women particularly, and also women who come from more diverse backgrounds. So I think it really says something that someone like Virginia, who is a white woman, and also at the time you have to remember, Sam, she was very wealthy. Her estate is worth around 30 million Australian dollars. So she did not lack the funds for the fight, but still she found herself outside the system. So I think that speaks to the problems, the more systemic problems that we're looking at here.
And Carla, I just wanted to go to you because you've been interviewing Virginia's family for months. They've called for a police review, a public inquest, among other interventions. So what are they hoping comes from these investigations should they take place?
So in June, the WA Police announced an internal review into their dealings with Virginia. So we had written to them, what month was that? I don't know. Earlier this year, we'd written to them asking for an internal investigation. Cole Blanche, the commissioner, got back to us and said, you put it to the ombudsman. So then we didn't hear back. And then Virginia's family wrote to them, and then they didn't hear back. But then we heard some chitter-chatter that there was going to be, something was going to happen. And then in Parliament, he did confirm that they were doing this internal investigation. So they're going to review their own interactions with Virginia, but that doesn't cover her interactions in the courts or with other agencies, with her health providers, anything like that. So the family's also requesting for an inquest into her death, a public inquest. So, the inquest system in WA is different to other states as well, and there's not very many public inquests, especially into suicide. So that is a public inquest. We'll be able to see exactly who interacted with her and what failings or what things could be changed for future victims. So that's what her family is calling for.
We're also reporting today that the WA Ombudsman is going to be reviewing the police's interactions with Virginia as well. So that's a significant development.
And a question for the both of you. What are you hoping that people take away from both your podcast and the investigation as a whole?
So I think one of the things that we hope people take away, we were both really struck by Virginia's notes on domestic violence, particularly controlling behaviour and those coercive control tendencies like controlling behaviour, jealousy. She wrote so articulately and just incredible. Like she just put it so concisely about her experience into these notes, almost like she was writing to, in the future, like advocate on this issue. Like it felt like she was writing like, controlling behaviour is abuse, recognise warning signs. It was these things like that she would be either telling someone else or, talking about in the future. So it was just incredible.
She said we must challenge traditional notions that confuse love with control, and also that DV does not discriminate. And just to explain the notes, they were sort of diary notes, sort of like things that were written down in a kind of a notebook. We think that they were mostly from January, February, in those early months of 2025 after the separation. They were given to us by Virginia's family in the US. And it really did seem that like at the very sort of end of her life, this is a woman who had gone through child abuse, 2 lots of trafficking. I mean, even before Jeffrey Epstein, she was trafficked. And then this marriage, which had its difficulties as well as its highs. And here she was in the Perth wheat belt on her farm, just thinking about what a healthy relationship was. And we were really struck by that. It almost seemed like Carla said, like she was thinking about advocacy in that area. She was really engaged in what domestic violence kind of constitutes, and very much the coercive control debate that we see going on in Australia right now.
Well, it's an absolutely heartbreaking story, but we're so lucky that we've had both of you reporting on it. So thank you so much, Mel and Carla, for your time.
Thanks, Sam.
Thanks for having us, Sam.
You can listen to all 4 episodes of the podcast Virginia on your favorite podcast app. And make sure to check out Melissa Fife and Carla Hildebrandt's feature at theage.com.au and smh.com.au. In the meantime, here's a preview.
Virginia Giuffre helped vanquish a prince and a millionaire.
Prince Andrew's accuser, Virginia Giuffre,
one of the most prominent and vocal accusers of sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein.
The most outspoken survivors of their abuse.
I won't stop fighting. I will never be silent until these people are brought to justice.
But one of her toughest battles was a very private one.
I was really shocked that she hadn't broken something in her face.
You're going to go there to protect her? That's funny. I mean, hell, you're her biggest threat right now.
In Australia, our systems failed her.
It was the worst thing that could have happened to her. Her children were her life.
I don't think any of us really understand what she carried every day.
She was a fierce advocate for so long, and it shouldn't have been on her to be advocating for herself.
Even in death, the conspiracies persisted.
Virginia Giuffre, that she was involved in a serious crash which has left her with just days to live.
Where she writes, quote, I am making it publicly known that in no way,
shape, or form am I suicidal.
This story just doesn't add up.
Can't believe a shred of it at this point. I've seen too much.
Virginia, a podcast from the newsrooms of The Age, the Sydney Morning Herald and WA Today. Out now.
If you or anyone you know needs support, you can contact the National Sexual Assault, Domestic and Family Violence Counselling Service on 1-800-RESPECT, 1-800-737-732, Lifeline on 131-114, or Beyond Blue on 1300-224-636. Today's episode was produced by Josh Towers. Our executive producer is Tammy Mills, and our podcasts are overseen by Lisa Muxworthy and Tom McKendrick. If you like our show, follow The Morning Edition and leave a review for us on Apple or Spotify. Thanks for listening.